So you all have heard me say it before that my grandmother always told me that when you're hosting a good event, everybody's in good conversation, don't interrupt them because they're going to go away and say how fun it was. But unfortunately, I have to interrupt you because we want to get started and keep you on schedule. We're going to start a little bit differently tonight because I saw something really cool online today. And some of you might have seen it as well. The Freak does these then and now photos all the time in the city of Detroit. And I thought, wow, this is really good because this is some of what we talked about last time and some of what we talked about, I don't know if this is working. I have to use this because we record them for all your friends that still once again didn't show up, although I'm grateful to all of you that did, which is really good. So hopefully we'll get this right. So when I saw this today, I thought, you know what? This is what the program's about, One Stop Ready. It's about having a vision for your community, right? We remember that? Who remembers that? That we have a vision for our community? A few people, right? So you have a vision for your community, you have a plan, you have some tools in your toolbox to implement that plan, and then you act as economic developers, right? That's what we talked about last time a little bit. So you think about, now these aren't in your community, they're in Detroit. So see, I can't even pick on any of you tonight, but you can see the vision of what you have. This is pretty cool. Hopefully our internet works good. So when they looked at this building and they transformed it, is this going to work, Brian? Oh, I'm moving it. There we go. Oh, it's going to be hard with this little finger button thing. I think I hold it down right? Yeah, I hold it down. There, that'll be easier. So when you looked at the old building, could you envision the new? So think about in your community. You've got old buildings, whether you're a township or whether you're Royal Oak, wherever you're from, Orion, you've got older buildings. Can you re-envision them? You know, the Eamon Center in downtown Lake Orion, can you re-envision the skin? Now, of course you can when you drive by, but in your role as an economic developer for your community, when you think about your plan, your vision for your community, are you thinking about, well, what is the possibility that's there? How are you acting? Old, new vision. Are you thinking in terms of how do we turn this into that? What are the tools that we need to do that? What do we need to have in our toolbox? Remember last session, you got some great information from the girl from Hamilton Anderson that said, what tools do you have? What is your vision plan? What are you implementing? Can you see the path to get to some of these things? I just think that some of these are so cool when you think about what it used to be and what it is today. And even though it's similar in large respect, there still has to be a vision. Some of them are broad visions. I mean, look at this one from what it was to what it is. So do you have the tools at hand, if you're a planning commissioner, or you're a planner, or you're a council person, or a trustee, do you think that you can walk around your community or drive around and say, you know, we have the tools to do that. We have the tools to create the vision, to get it from old to new, to get it from repurposed into something different. Now look at this one. I love this one. So, you know, you think about this is an old school building that was just completely falling apart. It doesn't mean it has to completely fall apart. Is your building official and your staff, remember we talked about staff last week, about having a top to bottom vision? Everybody's on the same page? You know, can they see the vision through to make that happen? And how timely could it be? How cost effective will it be for the person that's going to be doing it? And so tonight we're going to continue our progress on working on things like this. There's a couple of them that are just really neat. You think the conversion of old theaters, the conversion of things. So I show you this not because they're cool pictures, which they are. So just go to the free to do the then and now. You think about how dilapidated to how gorgeous. So who knows what this is? Book Cadillac. Very good. So if you've been to the Book Cadillac, you're like, wow, that hotel down there is gorgeous. Well, it wasn't 5 years ago when they started the project. So how can you re-envision yourself? So first thing we're going to do is start with a commitment. So who's committed to having a vision and being an economic developer for the community? Nobody? Oh my God. Well, everybody should be, all right? So even Mark from Troy raises his hand. That's major progress for me to get Mark to raise his hand. No, I'm teasing. So we're going to do something that is a little bit different and unique from what we do. We're going to put you to work just for like 3 minutes. Because one thing that we said was a requirement of this program is you had to have commitment to it, right? You didn't have to say yes to anything. You didn't have to say no to anything. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to even adhere to any of my words, but you have to be committed to be a one-stop ready community. How do we say we indicate your commitment? Who remembers? Who said it? Sarnett said you have to sign a poster. All right, somebody from Pontiac. Somebody from Pontiac, I see a bunch of you. Here, start taking your poster around. Let's get some signatures. Mayor, get some signatures from Pontiac on your poster, all right? All right, on the task. All right, somebody from Oak Park. Who's here from Oak Park? Somebody from Oak Park? Ah, there you go. I'm looking in the wrong direction. All right, now this isn't going to be everybody's signature on the poster, but it's going to be a start, right? What did we say about the purpose of signing the poster? He's got Highland Township Independence. I saw Independence. Where's Pat Kittle? There's Pat. Pat, get your team to start signing the poster. Who remembers why we're signing the poster? Commitment. What's the importance of having a poster with your goofy signature on it at your township where you're sitting? Who remembers? Anybody remember? Sean, do you remember? Oh, he was just not paying attention. God, do you remember? Why do we say sign the poster? And we want everybody to sign the poster. Why does everybody eventually have to sign the poster? The Orient folks know because they heard me yell at for you. Commitment of everybody, right? Because there's going to be somebody that says, the heck with all that. I'm going to go back to my old ways. Right, Neil? You have those people out in communities? We all have them, right? I've been one of those people before. I want all of you to be able to walk down the hall and point to the guy or the girl's signature on a poster and say, at one time in your life, you said I was going to listen. That's all the purpose of it. Now, you're all in this, all large boats. So we're going to pass out the posters. And while you're signing, we're going to start doing a little refresher course of what we learned last time around. So Ryan's going to yell at me when I try to do this by myself. But I'll try to do it. All right, so tonight, Academy session number 2, investor's perspective. So if I say you're going to learn about this work from the investor's perspective, what's the first thing that comes to mind? What's the first thing that comes to mind? Money. All right, that's one thing that comes to mind. What's another thing that comes to mind? When I say you're going to hear from the investor's perspective tonight about economic development, what do you think you're going to hear?
About what community, what they're looking for in a community that allows them to invest dollars.
What they're looking for in a community, how they're going to invest in dollars. What about my good friends out here? What do you think you're going to hear today from the investor's perspective? Ranting and raving? Return on investment? That's a good one. I'm not picking on Orion tonight. I pick on Orion all the time. From the investor's perspective, think about the context of what we learned last time. Clicker doesn't work. Right there. Brian, the clicker doesn't work. I feel like Brooks at the budget presentation. Oh, I didn't have it turned on. I want to remind everybody I went to the University of Kentucky. I didn't have this turned on. All right, so recap. Remember who's in. You know the communities that are in, who's here. Remember we talked about the hole. We talked about the job hole. What we're trying to do. It's all about jobs, right? Economic development is jobs, right? First and foremost. Is it parks? Yeah. Is it fire stations? Yeah. But what's the most important thing? Jobs. If you don't have people working in your community, then yeah, you know the answer. All right, so we talked about the hole. We lost in that time period 105,000 jobs. And we're starting to rebuild that. We talked about that. All of you remember that. What our projections are. And we can fill the hole with jobs by 2016. That's not too far away. So, but remember, that just fills that hole, which means we really only get our job number back to here. So we can't be satisfied that we fill the job hole if we just want to live in 2005. That is a good year, 2005. Kentucky went to the Final Four. It's good. It's a good year, 2005. But we don't want to live that way in job sense. Remember, we talked about the real hole that we're still trying to fill. It's taxable value. We talked about how economic development impacts you as a community in the sense of what you're worth, what your taxes are, what your foundation is. Remember we talked about all that? We talked about just at the county level, the substantial loss we had just in valuation, and that involves all of you. So when we lose value, you lose value. So at our lowest point, we lost over 36% of what we're worth as a community, as a county. So 36% translates into, what was it there, like 60 billion of what? So you lose that value. Where does it go? It evaporates into thin air. How do you replace the value? Who remembers how do we replace the value? Oak Park, how do you replace the value? Good question. Property values have to go up, right? So do property values go up 36% overnight? No. Right? So everybody, who knows what proposal A is? You don't have to answer, but you all know, right? So proposal A caps it. So even if it goes up 10% overnight, it's not going to go up 10%. It's not capped, right? So rate of inflation last year, Dan, was what? Negative? Oh, 0.1%. So last year, rate of inflation was 0.1%. So, yeah, we're not exactly going to climb out of that valuation hole quickly, are we? So we've got the hole to fill. How your role as an economic developer works in your community to fill the hole. Now, is this about approving dance clubs and Burger King? It's not, is it? This is about having an understanding of what the value is that you're considering in your community and what it means to your community. So approaching it instead of from the personality-driven world, which is still good, because you're on your board, you're commissioned, you've been elected, you've been hired, because you've got strong, good-willed personalities. But this is about understanding the value of what you're talking about. And remember the good young girl from Hampton, she talked about how you're implementing, where you're getting your vision from, the types of things that are in vogue right now. She talked about this Michigan Modern and then 50s Modern, these different things. Getting you thinking about what is it that your vision is. What are you trying to accomplish? You're trying to fill a hole. What are you trying to fill a hole with? What types of things are you interested in? And then she talked about implementation tools, about what you need to know, what you need to be aware of, those types of things. So to get you back up to speed on the whole thing. So tonight is to talk about the perception of the investor. So when I say the investor, I usually call them a check writer. So check writer. So if you're writing checks in a community, that means that you're paying taxes, that you're building something, you're hiring somebody. So when I say from the perspective of the investor, I always say the check writer, because I believe your job as a community official, as a leader in your community, is to value the check writer. Because that's the guy that pays all of our salaries, that's the guy that keeps the schools going, that's the guy that keeps the parks all nice and cut from the grass. It's the check writers. They fill the coffers in our communities. And they're starting to do better. So from the perspective of residential growth, look how we're doing. This is really good. So I remember when I was supervisor in Orion Township in 2009, they built 5 houses. Remember that, Neil? We built 5 houses in 2009. Had a lot of houses, wasn't it? That was really good. Yeah, not so much. So remember where we were in the heydays? A lot of people say, well, Matt, this was the big run-up of the mortgage crisis. Not really. This wasn't the big run-up of the mortgage crisis here. Because this is what we used to average. It was right about in here, in about 05. We used to average that many permits in the county, just for residential construction. So look at where we have to go now. So we're on pace a little bit. 2013, we got up to 27, almost 2,800 permitted units going up. But we're not anywhere near where we're at averages for construction. So we still have a ways to go. How do we get the perception of those investors to say, you know, let's come back and do certain things? You can have an indication of what's happening in your community by just having a tacit understanding of numbers like this. These are charts and graphs and all of these types of things. Median sales price. So what's stuff worth? Again, it's talking about filling that hole. So when you're considering something in your community, creating a vision, you know, what's something worth? So this for home sale prices. First 6 months of 2014, we're up 58% from the low point in 09. That's pretty good. But our median price back here in 05 was still higher than where we are. You know, are we driving that? How are we driving that market? What are the things that you consider from the perspective of why somebody would come build here? What are they building? What do they want to bring to your community? What's the type of stuff that's going in? So you see back here, even in 2010, the different colors. 2010, yes, it's pretty hard times. GM plants were closed. The bankruptcy been through, but not complete. You know, they were in back some. They're still building commercial. But look at today, 2012. This isn't even 14. Commercial, industrial properties. Look how small it got in 2011. Look at how that's changing now. Medical uses. Look at medical in 2010. Now look at medical here. So what do you think's driving the medical? You seen the big hospital expansion in Pontiac? Good project that the mayor's got going. the new hospital expansions over in Commerce, those types of areas. So if you have an understanding of what the trends are, then you have an understanding of what the check writers are doing out there. And it's important to have that basic understanding. Local construction employment. If you have an understanding of things, people are building things, then you'll have an understanding of the direction of where the economy of your community is going. The purpose of showing you these types of numbers is to get you thinking about all of the things that go into the investor's perspective. So who remembers the Oxford story that I told you? About why they thought they were going to have lots of growth. Who remembers that story? Somebody does, right? Who said it? Because they're a cute little town. I love Oxford. I'm not picking on it. So anybody tell Joe Young, those my good friends in Oxford, I'm not picking. But remember the story. We're going to develop because we're the cutest downtown. So, from the perspective of an investor, does the investor come to your community thinking, my only thought is I want to find a cute downtown for this business? Probably not, right? You all know that already. So what are some of the things that they are thinking? I love this chart. I love it. This is the stuff that goes into finding a site location for business. So you're going to look at how much traffic is there. You're going to look at the real estate in the area. The boxes are sized for a reason. You'll hear from the two investors that we have tonight. They'll do questions and answers and give you some perspective on all of this. The trade area, meaning the market area, where are the customers? They're thinking about all this stuff. The sales forecast, how much sales force they're going to have, the demographics, the psychographics, all the things that go into what's in the area, who lives there, customer analytics, they count rooftops, how much income is in each rooftop, what kind of cars they drive, what type of roads are next to it, what's the infrastructure, is there fiber optic, is there connectivity, all those things. All those things go into customer analytics. And then they focus, of course, on the site. So all these big boxes. So when I first saw this, I thought, well, where's the government in there? Oh, there it is. It's this little tiny thing right here. It's behind and underneath the more important stuff. It's this little one here called entitlement process. This entitlement doesn't mean that they're entitled to it. It means that that's what we've historically termed permitting and us granting approval for things, right? So in this whole analytical process, and I didn't create this. This is from Expansion Solutions, Big Site Location Magazine. This is their analysis of how site selection really works. And this applies in general terms to pretty much anything. If you're going to put in a hairdresser shop, you're going to think about where the traffic's coming from, at least you should be, who my customer analytics are, the demographics, things. You're going to think about all of that. Remember last year, or last session, we talked about Miami? Who remembers how many permits it takes to open a traveling food stand in Miami? Something like that. It's like 40 permits or something. So if you're doing all of this, is this the top of your mind or the back of your mind? This is what tonight's all about. It's having an understanding from the perspective of the investor that it's not about that they're angry they have to appear before you, is that they're constrained by the fact that they've gone through a great majority of all of this before they even get to your little tiny piece of this process. And if you have a good understanding of this when they're walking in the door, when they come to the planning commission, when they walk up to the counter, if you have a good understanding of this, you're going to think differently about the types of questions that you're going to ask. Because the question will come up about traffic. And instead of saying, oh, geez, Bob's going to be upset because there's going to be 3 extra cars in the morning as he's trying to get out of his subdivision. Instead of thinking of it that way, you're going to be hopefully thinking about what's driving that traffic coming out. What is the customer demographics? Why does this person want to be here? Why did they choose this site? Instead of thinking first and foremost about this process. So this is what tonight's all about, is that process. So we have to, of course, deal with perceptions, right? So this is the clicker spot, right? All right, Ryan's going to come up. So everybody that has clickers on their table, grab your clickers, remember, to get you thinking in the right direction.
He really helped.
That was cute.
Is this thing on its way? All right, so as we have said before, remember last time, some of you came to some of the sessions last year too. I know Mike Flood over there was eating. He came to a couple sessions last year. He knows how this works. Now, as we said before, you answer these questions honestly, or it's like golf. You know, yeah, I shot par, but I didn't really. So, how does that work? So answer them honestly. And the reason you answer them honestly is because what's the program about? Self-evaluation, right? So if you can't answer these questions honestly and look at your peers and with me, then how the heck are you going to answer them honestly with an investor, right? So let's answer them honestly, and then we'll talk a little bit about each one. First question, when someone enters your community office, how are they greeted? How are they greeted? The perspective of the investor. The investor walks in, he's going to write you a big old check. He's ready to build that $25 million factory in your town. He's ready to put in that new bar. How are they greeted? Is it a ghost town? Now, you know, the good supervisor, Tom Zorner from Commerce, he saw this one day and he said, well, man, I don't have the staff. So, I mean, it's okay. But if that's how they're greeted, be honest. Well, it's not because we hide, it's because we don't have anybody. You know, I understand Pontiac's rebuilding itself internally, Mayor. You know, there's not a lot of people there. I understand that. So answer this, is it they're asleep at the wheel? I don't really care. I work for the government, so, you know, I'll get to you when I get to you. Or is it this wonderful, shining Chris Barnett face? No, that doesn't even look like Chris, does it? That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. All right, so we got enough? Only 44. Now, there's over 100 people in the room, and we have 60 clickers. And only 45 people can answer this question, honestly? A few more. Now, I'm going to control you until we get up over 50. So who hasn't voted, push the clicker. One more. Okay, there we go. All right, so what's the answer? All right, so more than half of you think that you are the eager beaver, Ward and June Cleaver of community. People walk in and you can't wait to shake their hand. That's great. A few of you were somewhat honest that, yeah. And a big majority of you are this. So, eager beavers. Who's an eager beaver? Who answered that we're the best customer service on the face of the planet? Half of you did. Deidre, how do you know that?
Because I'm up and down there every day myself.
So you go through there every day.
Make sure we do this.
So you're watching, you're observing, making sure they're up to task. Who else is an eager beaver?
I actually have had developers tell me that it's wonderful to come into White Lake because they always greet you with a smile.
I always greet you with a smile. That's good. Who else is an eager beaver in the room? Why, how do you know that? Because you're not even there all the time.
Because I'm in the every single day.
So you're greeting people every day. Permeates, becomes contagious, that first impression. Remember the story I told last time of the development that came to Orion with the young guy that was on his phone and he got screamed at, no cell phones at the counter? That's the kind of perception that you don't want, right? Eager beaver type stuff. So who answered on the first one that there's nobody's home? It's okay.
Where's the potty?
So what's the reason? I think I know. What's the reason?
There are people there.
Mhm.
I just feel that there's nobody home.
Nobody home. That's good. So if I interpret that's not necessarily about that nobody's actually in the building. It's just that you believe the perception is that, well, nobody really there to help.
As I spoke earlier, I can replace that with an act.
Ah, that's true. That's true. Who else voted this one? That it was an empty room. What gives you that perception?
Well, when you walk into the city of Troy, City Hall, there's no one to greet you. And we, almost not quite a decade ago, council defeated a proposal that would cost the average homeowner $6 to develop a new wing to the building to greet people. It was going to be called, somebody can help me. I think it was Customer Solutions Department.
Huh?
And I wrote a check for $6 and I handed the treasurer. I said, mark this for Customer Solutions Department. But nothing ever happened. The council voted it down.
So the idea, though, is we all want to be the third one, right? That's how we want to envision our communities. If you're on a planning commission, how do you know that this is happening? Do you just expect it to happen? You should, right? Last week, we talked about top-down mentality of leadership. If you're on the planning commission, you should walk into every meeting knowing that the staff of the community and the elected full-timers, that this is how they react on your behalf. Let's go to the next one. All right, perception questions. Answer honestly. When you hear that someone wants to invest in your community, what most frequently comes to mind? Is it the kindly gentleman that wants to build something on his house and invest that way? That you first think, oh man, somebody in my community is doing a nice little project. Is it Mr. Greedy? Oh man, here comes another one of those jerks that want to do something that we don't like. All their greedy money. Is it the small business owner that you're like, man, I love this. We got another hair salon in downtown Lake Arnold. This is awesome. Or is it the guy that came to my counter and we chased away and I had to run out to the parking lot? What's the perception that comes about? So when you hear, oh boy, somebody came in today, I heard from the supervisor, some guy wants to do a big project. What do you think of? Is it the entrepreneur or is it the greedy guy? Is it the corporate guy with the suitcase? What comes to mind? It's important to understand this, to know what your perception is, to know how they're perceiving your community. Going forward. I tell you, Ryan, we have reluctant voters today. These must be more hard questions. You can answer honestly. I know all of you want us to. I know you do. Bunch of greedy bastards coming in my community. I get it. Sorry. I told you I swear like twice. That's it. I promise. One. Okay? Promise. So where are we at? 46 people, something. All right. Let's see the answers from half the crowd. Not enough people voted for it. Well, we got more questions. There we go. All right, so number 3. When you first hear someone wants to come and do something and invest in your community, great majority of, overwhelming majority of you, look at it as the small business person. A few of you think it's the kindly gentleman, a few of you think it's the corporate guy, and only a few of you think the greedy side. So who can tell me in their community what percentage of economic development comes from the kindly girl that hangs the "Come Welcome Oakland" sign on their store? If you know. Anybody know? 2/3, you think? You're saying about Pontiac, 2/3 is the kindly storefront owner. Hey, Matt, what would you say answer that question?
I would think it's probably much, overall, on the total square footage wise, it's probably only 50/50.
50/50?
Like bodies on the street is
70%, you think, in your community? Oak Park? Yeah, I would say that about Oak Park. So who answered greedy guy? Why'd you answer greedy guy?
Because you, I think I'm with the reputation of things that with the Pontiac, there's a guy coming, hey, can I go to dance when I was on this, something like that.
Sure. So hearing that explanation, who wants to change their vote? Be honest now. Or, phrase it another way, who's thought that before sitting on one of your boards? Because this guy's just trying to put one over, he's just about how much money he can make. Who's thought that? Mary, you thought that. I sat next to you on the ZBA. I did too, right? I'm raising my hand. Oh, half you are liars. I know you thought. It's okay. Yeah. Louisville Park? Sure, sure. That makes sense. So Mark's comment is that the big Bloomfield Park project down here in Pontiac, because it was such a failure, that left a bad taste in their mouth. So it creates that, boy, after a while. So who served more than 10 years on one of their boards or planning commissions? I know just a few. Does that build up after a while? Do you become numb to it? Mary, do you kind of become numb to that? You just do your work, or? You have to do?
Because of your ability.
Yeah.
And you don't form personal thought.
All right, let's go to the next question. All right, we talked a little bit about this last time. Why do you think they choose a particular community to invest in? Now, this isn't Oxford, New York, cheap downtown, even though we have it. This is from the perspective of the investor. The investor comes to your door. They come in front of you and your board. Why do you think they chose your community? Is it because you've got unbelievable quality of life? And don't try to say, well, yeah, some businesses would want that. Just in general. Remember the demographic I showed where they talked about a graphic with the demographics and the site and the real estate and the traffic counts and all that? You're thinking that, well, why are they choosing? We said, hey, look at your community. Why are they choosing that? Is it because you've got this cool downtown area? They want to be part of it, want to be vibrant. Question on the front.
They must figure there's a market there, so whatever the business is.
Market there? Okay. Well, how many votes? We only got 3 votes. Remember, we have clickers. You have to choose.
You have to hear the rest of this.
Oh, 3. All right. And then choosing your community because you're so damn organized and you've got the most beautiful master plan that anybody's ever seen. Are they choosing your community because you've got great traffic counts and customers coming out your ears? So, you've got an unbelievable quality of life community that everybody thinks is Shangri-La. You've got the most beautiful downtown area that people want to be in, businesses want to thrive. You've got the greatest master plan in the history of master plans, and you're very organized. Or you got customers and traffic. Why are they choosing you? Sure, it can be easy access. We'll add that on too. Good suggestion.
So the question is, number one, Simon, community that's seen its dollar value.
Could be extraordinary. Yeah, this is to elicit, you're thinking, you're the economic developer. They're standing at your counter, they're standing in front of your planning commission. Why are they there? Why'd they come here? Did they come here because the people that live behind, they just didn't like those people that live behind, and so they came here just to aggravate them so they could come yell at your meeting? I mean, why are they standing in front of you? Why did they choose you? I mean, this is the impetus. All right, Brian, let's see the results of this one. All right, see. You guys are smarter than last year's group. They depended on that. Those little buggers from Troy probably sent you cliff notes or something. All right, as you'll hear tonight, site selection, where they put businesses, is very rarely, if ever, driven by the fact that you've got cool quality of life. This is where people build their house, not invest their money. And I know I've always said, building a garage is investment. You have to treat the guy building the garage the same as the factory, but this is not the reason they chose your community. They only choose this if that's where they need to be, not where they want it to be. Rochester has 98% occupancy. They may be at 100 for all I know. But people need to be in that type of environment with those specific types of businesses. This one overlaps with this one. Did anybody answer this one? 3? Some people answered. Who answered number 3? Somebody did. A few chickens. Oh, there's one. Okay. I bet I know the answer, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, it's the demographics around the, I don't know exactly where on that map that the rest of them are, but to me it was the demographics of where things people will be able to draw from.
There is value. People from Orion will laugh when I say this, but there is value in having a structured process, of having an understanding of how you're planned. There is value. But having a master plan is what it says. It's a plan. It's not a wall. So when site selectors, people who want to choose a community for investment, this plays an important part. But if we click back to the other presentation, remember where it landed on that graphic? This is in that little tiny box underneath everything else. So it doesn't drive it. All of you were right that answered number 4. This is the principal driver of what you decide to do anything. If you're going to have customers and cars to get them there and the capacity to park them and demographics of hit counts and people that can do this, fill parking lots, and we all hate parking lots, but if you have people that can fill parking lots, that's where they're going to go. Of any type of investment. Even industrial, you might think, well, geez, industrial could go anywhere. Industrial needs to go where they have access, where they have other things. And so you're right. Let's go to the next question. All right. As an elected or appointed official, how do you think you are perceived by investors? So, I come and I stand my first vision of you. You're smiling, everything is good. Are you this guy? I love that picture, I love it. When I stand up there, I look up and I'm like, I wish they would all stop getting along and working so hard. They're just so unbelievable, this group. They work so hard, and they're all happy with each other, and they're smiling at each other. Or do you think your person, this is, remember, self-evaluation. Because you think, you know what, they think I'm the judge and jury anyway, I might as well just be that person. Which one do you think they think of you? The investor thinks of you. Just stern and tough. Happy and collaborative. I'm the judge. You do what I say. Is this Congress? I'm saying it's shut up. Is that the auto bailout hearings or something? Yeah. Could be. I don't know. I love that shit. So I know this is a self-evaluation question, but I'm going to require more answers. How are you perceived? How do you think they look at you when they stand up there to make their presentation? What do you think they're thinking of you? What do you think, Ryan? Enough? Boy, the chicken stuff. It's okay though. I got it. All right, let's see what we got from this video.
Give it a second.
Yeah, process. Oakland County, just 2 weeks ago, won its 10th consecutive award for the most digitally advanced county in America. Wow. 2 stars. You notice the graph's still not up. It was there, it flashed.
It went to the next slide.
Do we have to redo the vote?
No, let's do this question, and then we will go back.
So they need to redo this vote?
They have to, because they started answering. They started one countdown.
Oh, okay, everybody answer again real quick.
Dan,
Dan.
that was the top 5. That was the top 5 for Oakland County.
Top 5.
Yeah,
There you go.
number 1.
This question is how do you want to be perceived?
Oh,
This
this
question was how do you think you're perceived? This question is how do you want to
Oh, you got us all screwed up. Oh, we reset it? Or no? All right, let's do this. All right, on the think you are perceived, how you think you're perceived. All right, who answered happy, collaborative, we all love each other? Lots of people? Lots of people. Why'd you answer happy, collaborative? What makes you think that when they're standing there, they think you're just all Mayberry? Yeah.
My job is to take the hits for City Hall, so you know, if I go back to my people, I'll take care of the headaches that they normally would.
So you're the, I'm cool, I can solve the problem.
Right,
That guy.
even if I don't agree.
Get that. Why do you think that you're Mayberry? When they walk up there, that check writer standing there and saying, man, look at this council, look at this board, they're great, they collaborate. What do you?
I've been on the planning commission for about 4 or 5 years, and it's, the planning commission has always worked collaboratively well together. And I've been in other public sectors where it's been a mess.
Where it hasn't worked.
Honing those,
It's okay, you leave that to me and Todd. We do that.
Yeah.
So who else answered that when the perception of the investor of you is a happy collaboration? Who else answered that? You already answered one. Why do you think? Is that practice?
I think we're just in a lucky place. We have a very good board right now. We all get along well. We don't vote the same way. Everything we respect.
Who answered the hearings in Watergate? Remember, it's an honest reflection. Is that the investor standing there? You know, how do you think? What do you think they're thinking? Why are you answering that one?
I think because they see us, probably rightfully so, as really trying to discern what's the truth here, what's the value to the community. You know, we're elected to represent the people in the community, and I'm pretty sure, you know, I never thought I looked like Rick Wagner before, but I bet I do sometimes when I'm sitting there, and that's a challenge. That's a challenge to elected officials and I think planning commissioners to do that balance of representing the people who already live there, have businesses there, and be accepting to those that are coming in. And I don't know what the look is that you get on your face to look right, but I think in reality, there is a lot of great collaboration. But what that looks like to somebody coming in, I'm pretty sure is number one.
Yeah, it has. It was really insightful. Because well, that's what I'm saying. So she points out the dilemma of all of this, right? Is how do you appear helpful to the investor without sending an indication to your community that you're just a pushover and you're taking whatever, right?
Yeah.
And how do you do that? How do you maintain that balance? Just, you're sitting there publicly, you don't want to be all giddy, oh my gosh, they come to our town, right? So how do you maintain that balance? And this is less about looking stern than it is the way that you're perceived and the way that you act. You can look however you want to look. Investors won't care. You can look all upset all you want. Doesn't matter. It depends on how you act. So if the perception of your actions is this, now that investor walks away thinking, man, geez, that is a stern, tough bunch. So the next question was, how do you want to be perceived in the same way? Would everybody agree with this one? Who agrees with this one by raising hands? Who agrees with the judge? I want to be perceived as you're going to listen to me in any damn well way I can. There's communities out there that believe that this is it. Who thinks that this is the happy medium? Be stern, be tough. If it takes 8 meetings, it's okay. They're rich, they can take it. No? Nobody? Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, so what most closely represents the experience of going through your zoning, permitting, and approval process? All right, so what do you think the investor thinks of when he shows up and says, I'm ready to do this project until the end? How he perceives you in your process. Is it, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to work with you, I'm going to be there every day of the week if I have to, I'm going to put you at my desk, I'm going to get this done? Is it, here's all my paperwork, go fill it out, come back when you're done? Is it, we're the Chicago Cubs, our motto is see you next year? Or is it, all we do is win championships? We could have picked somebody different than LeBron. Pistons won championships. Right? So, is it, we're going to work with you every step of the way. This is the perception, not what you do. This isn't about, oh yeah, we do that. No. This is what investors think you do. What do you believe they're thinking to get through your process? We're Disneyland of zoning. We're great, man. We've got all the best applications. We've got the best process. Just go figure it out and come back and see us. Who are you? What? What do you want to do? All right. Let me take your number. I'll get back to you next year. All we do is win championships. What do they think of you? Are you fun and collaborative and solve the problems? You require them to figure it out on their own. Are they thinking, geez, if I go to this community, I have to figure this out on my own because nobody works with me? Is it, we don't want to hear from you. Which one is it? All right, let's see the results on this one. All right, look at half of you. Half of you do this. So out of the communities that are here, who has attended a pre-application meeting? You. Who has not attended a pre-application? All right, Mike Flood.
Yes.
How do you know, because you probably voted number 1, didn't you?
Yep.
I knew you did. So Mike Flood, how do you know that happens if you've never been to a pre-application?
And we've had to make decisions on the board and get recommendations from planning commission. We've had the developers, planning is going through the process.
So you got firsthand from the developer, the investor that says, man, this has been a great process your staff has been working with. Who else has never attended a pre-application? So how do you know it happens? Well, you're oriented. I'll call you there. Somebody different from oriented that's never attended a pre-application. Everybody else has been to pre-application meetings? That's a lie.
Well, you already chose me, so.
I know. Well, you got a bunch of timid.
I just want to repeat.
So how do you know?
How
do you know?
We get the same kind of response from the developers. They thank the officials of our city for a smooth process.
You get the feedback.
Yep.
All right, who answered number 2? That, you know what, realistically, we probably are perceived that turn in your stuff and bring it back and hopefully it's in the correct form. Who answered that one? I knew it was wrong. I'm pointing past you, Don. So Matt, why do you think you have that percent?
Well, you know, based on 15 years of reviewing plans for developers, the more effort you put into helping them under number one, the less prepared new developers seem to be coming in with their plans.
Ah, it's an interesting perspective. You two listening to that? Even Matt Farrell's like, oh, I've never heard that one. That is a really interesting perspective. So we've talked about, this is a customer service-based initiative, right? The whole idea is we don't really care which one you do. The idea is to find the methodology of how you need to be perceived to drive the economic vision of your community. It's probably a mix between these two, somewhere in between. But it's important to know how you're perceived. Because if you're this community, do you think a lot of investors like going to this community? No. Do they have to sometimes? Yeah, because why? Picture of the cars. So if you're in, like, I can't pick on Oakland County communities anymore, I get in trouble. So if you're in Lansing, I pick on Lansing. Lansing, is that a good one, Matt? Lansing, yeah, it's a good one. If you're in Lansing, it's a little bit like this sometimes. But sometimes you have to go there. There's some great demographics in Lansing. There's rooftops and income that you want to build stuff in and make money. Sometimes you go there. All right, well, I think we got one or two more, and then we're going to get into the rest of it. What most closely represents a scene from one of your community site plan review public hearings? What most closely resembles what happens at your public? Do you typically incite protests over what's coming up? Is it the Korean parliament where they dive over tables at each other? Now, of course, I know they don't dive over tables because I haven't seen you in the press, but the mentality of that could be the mentality of that. What most like represents you? It's a ghost town. Last year Auburn Hills was here. The whole Auburn Hills team answered this question, just so you know. Is it calm and orderly, but we get more people than we ever want to hear, and then like all of these people all say the same thing?
You know what?
Is it people really get rallied up? You're having a public hearing on something. People really get rallied in your community, and they're out, and the signs are out, and all of you are your destiny if you vote for this. Is it just chaos? Board members sniping at each other, the public popping out of order? Is it everything's done so appropriately and smoothly that nobody shows up because they know you're handling it, you're that good? Or is it just calm and orderly and you go through the process? What most closely represents you? You have all participated in these hearings. You know what happens. Be honest with yourself. I presided over hearings where it wasn't fun, that it did turn a little bit nasty and chaos. Sometimes that happens. But what would the investor think of you if he has to come to your community and say, geez, I got to build something. This is going to be a little bit controversial because I got to put drive-through. Sorry. I had to do it. I'm talking about the controversy. So what are they thinking? They're thinking, oh my God, in that community, they come out of the woodwork. This is going to take us 3 years. What do they think? All right, let's see the results. All right, half of you said we have significant community input. We handle it professionally. They say their piece, we make decisions. A bunch of you said we're so good, barely anybody shows. Is it because, whoever answered this one, is it because you're so good, nobody shows, they just trust you're doing it right, or is it because your community is so apathetic, they don't even know what's going on? Community's not informed.
Special district, especially places that the people would never know it was coming, it was already decided to work.
Already decided ahead of time. So if that process was improved, then it might turn into something a little bit different. You get more community involved. Who else had the empty room? I'm just curious. Is it community apathy, or just they're like, you know what, those Oak Park people, you know, I trust they're going to do the right thing?
Both. I don't think it's just, I mean, I think we do our job well, and I think we trust all the people on the planning commission, so they're doing it all. You know, in this day and age, it's hard to get people out, unless it's a very, very important issue.
So we had a couple of votes up in here, and I'm assuming that's probably because on occasion things do get a little chaotic. It gets a little bit problematic. In this whole process, as we go through the next 2 academy sessions, and we start to get into tools and the mechanics of how you can really protect yourself from a lot of this type of stuff, you'll start to see that there's some strategies that you can implement that will help you avoid this kind of atmosphere, where you're constantly re-noticing things and inviting yourself into these types of environments. And so we'll work on those things up. But it's important to know what the perception of the investor is. If the investor feels that if they come to your community that it's going to turn into this every time, then you've got a significant problem. More than just being an economic developer. Hopefully you would be some type of blend between these two. All right, I think we got one more question, right? All right, this is very important. Have you personally, not someone for you, but you personally, ever applied for some type of required permit? Have you had to go into a community and apply for a building permit, apply for site plan, apply for any type of thing that would require a review and a permit? Have you actually had to go do that for yourself? Not me or yes, this is an easy one, yes or no. I've either done it or I haven't done it. See, this isn't even an opinion one. See, we're up over 50 now. We've got easier questions. So before we look at the answers, why is this important? So you've experienced it yourself. We've all heard that old adage, walk in someone else's shoes, right? You know, you don't know their travels until you walked in their shoes. If you walked in the shoes of the developer, the investor, you have a different understanding of how your community does the process, don't you? All right, let's see the response. How many of you have a different understanding of that? Process. All right, so more than half of you have pulled something on your own. So who's pulled a permit before on their own? What was your experience? Did you learn new things? Was it status quo?
I'm an architect.
Oh, geez, you do it all the time.
All the time.
All right, you do it all the time.
It's different.
Yeah. Gary Wall, who's from Waterford, he was here at the last session. I don't think Gary's here tonight. Related a story to Lieutenant Governor the other day about this program. He said, Lieutenant Governor, I'm a Bill Daniels, you remember the story, he said, when I would go pull permits, I'd have a job that would be maybe a $600 job, and it would take me 9 weeks to get a permit. So if I'm going to be in and out in a day or less than a day on a job, and it takes me 9 weeks to get a permit, something's got to get fixed, right? You wouldn't know that unless you went through the process sometimes. So it's important to have an understanding. Who's never been through the process? Who's never submitted for a permit? So Don, you've never submitted for a permit. You've never submitted for a permit. So do you have a reasonable understanding of what happens? Marginal? Right? But a little bit, because you're involved in a marginal understanding. Who else, other than Don, is you're the city manager, so you know what happens. Somebody that's just a commissioner that's never been through the process. Do you have an understanding of what happens when to review the permit and get all that done?
I generally do, because I've worked in the city staff for a while, part-time, not in that area. So I have a weird perspective on this from both inside, but no, I've never drawn it. And I'd actually like to walk through that with somebody one time.
So we're going to transition now into our good friends that have joined us to help from their perspective. So I talked a little less, which I'm sure you'll all be grateful for. I think that was the last question. Is there one more question? Sure. All right, so let me finish the comment on why it's important to know the process. Why do you think, as a planning commissioner or a board member, it's important to know the process? Dan, what's our first question? Dan, what's the first question we ask in our economic development team?
When do you want to open?
And what does that mean? What's the incentive? Mike Flood, what's the incentive? Time, right? Time. Time is the new incentive. You need to have an understanding, if your permit process sucks, what does it affect? Time. Time. If a permit application sits in review for 3 weeks, maybe it's justified. It's okay if it is. But if there's an expectation of process and time, you're sitting there as a planning commissioner and thinking, I'm going to vote on this tonight because they're going to build it next week, and then it goes into a different process, and you're 4 months down the road. You have to be thinking what the cause and effect of all of it is. Your process too. Meaning if you're considering something, are there active ways that you can consider getting through something in a single meeting? As opposed to saying, I want to see how much the tree costs. Remember the tree story? Everyone know about the trees? They cost $50,000. So it's important to know the process. This is my last question. When investment proposals come before you, do you feel that you have the information or tools that have to make a fully informed decision? This means when you're sitting at your meeting, the stuff that you've gotten beforehand and the stuff that you're looking at the meeting, you have everything that you need. Yeah, I got everything I need, because I know where Old Man Johnson's fence was in '52, and it's gonna stay there. No, I'm kidding. Yes, I feel fully informed. I'm pretty confident I got everything I need. I'm just winging it, man. I go on my instinct and my gut. I don't get anything in my packets. Nobody tells me anything. I have no bleeping idea, because I showed up 6 drinks in and, no, I'm kidding. No idea. No idea. Yep, I got everything I need. I know exactly what we're doing. I've reviewed it. I know what it is. I'm pretty confident. My packet's strong. I trust my staff. They know what they're doing. I'm winging it because we're doing the best we can. I don't care, really. That's pretty much, I don't care. I'm just here to pick up my $6 or whatever we get paid for my English. All right? So what's the answer to that? I know I'm running over. I apologize to our 2 guests that I'm running over on this. But it's important to set the perspective. You got a slow computer tonight, eh? Okay. We'll upgrade that. Taxpayer expense. All right, somewhat confident. This is generally the answer, right? You feel pretty confident of what you're doing, and most everybody says, yeah, I've got everything I need. So here's the question. If you're in the first category, you're fully informed and you're somewhat confident, give me one example that would justify postponing a decision on something. So whoever answered one of those 2 categories, what would be an example of postponing something? If you have everything at hand, because you just answered, I got everything and I'm confident.
The solid waste transfer, the county hasn't been 12 years. The committee hasn't been.
All right, so you were ready, but an outside force, the county, was like, they need to get their act together. Okay, that's a good one. What's another reason? If you're fully informed and you're confident, you're all that, man, you're ready to go. Why would you postpone something? What is an example in your lifetime that you postpone something? Neil?
Petitioner can't answer the question.
Petitioner can't answer the questions. So they come in and the stuff that they're saying doesn't match what you're fully informed on and prepared and confident, and you're like, well, what the heck's going on here? We got to postpone this because you've just told me a different story. All right, that's a good one. It's another one.
Public hearing, residents come, they get questions that maybe weren't considered or part of the application, and no one's prepared to answer it, no one's maybe looked at it.
So new
due
information.
diligence, right.
New information. What's your thought?
That's exactly what I was going to say when there's objections from the public.
New information. So what if the objection is, I just don't like it?
You gotta take that in stride. You're gonna have a lot of people, the room is probably filled with people who don't like it.
So these are always variables. Now, remember this section is the perception of the investor. I bet you most of you answered on your own perception of how you believe you were prepared. Would you vote differently if I said, does the investor think you're prepared? Think about that as we transition into our next section. That was our last question, right? So we have 2 really good guests with us tonight. I like them both, which is maybe a negative for all of you, but they're good in their own right. Steve Bach. Steve Bach is general counsel for Belmere Corporation. Belmere Corporation builds things like CVS stores and other commercial developments. They do a lot of different development projects. As you can imagine, things like CVSs are not the most easy things to administer through zoning and communities. Why? No idea sometimes. Sometimes it's because of their location, the parking, the drive-through. Steve's here to share some perspectives from his position, answering some questions. You are all allowed to ask him questions. Our other guest, come on up, Steve. Our other guest is Matt Farrell. Matt Farrell is a principal at Core Partners. Core Partners is an unbelievable real estate firm in Birmingham. They've got the orange signs that say Core on them. You'll see them more often than not all over the place. Matt is a whiz at analytics and demographics, and he carries that iPad with him, I think, 24 hours a day. And if you ask him, hey, can you pull up a property, he almost pulls it up while you're thinking. It's like a Jedi mind trick. Matt's firm, Core Partners, does space everywhere. They're now partnered with Burton Katzman. I think they absorbed Burton Katzman. So they do residential, commercial, office, industrial. They've got entities, sub-entities that do all of that. He is a wealth of knowledge of how development projects go forward in every scale of development. So Matt, come on up.
Pleasure. Those expectations are way too high. Thank you very much.
I thought about doing the same.
Yeah. It was a safe door.
And apologize for Steve's tan. He does work once in a while. He does work.
All but some.
Yeah, all but some. So Ryan, the format of what we're going to pursue here, We're going to go right into questions, or we're going to have them give a brief presentation?
Well,
Oh, they had the iPads.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys prepare a presentation, or we didn't tell you it was just going to be questions?
You know what, hopefully I'm ready for anything.
I'm putting them on the spot. So the first question is this: what I'd like you to do is, after having seen the interaction and the discussion, I'd like you to share a little bit of reflective thought on what you witnessed and what you heard, and then a general description of your approach when you start to think about going into a community. What are some of the thoughts that go through your head in preparation? So, Matt, why don't you start?
First, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. It's actually remarkable to see 7 communities, I believe, represented here this evening, out of 61 in Oakland County, is that correct? And 7 have gone through the program previously. For those in the back, can you hear my voice? I project fairly well.
We need you to use that, because otherwise the recording that the deadbeat, the nice people that didn't show up, no, I'm teasing. God, that's how I get in trouble. We need to get picked up.
Thank you very much. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you here this evening, and commend you on being part of the One Stop Ready program. To have 7 communities through the program, 7 more in this class, 14 in total out of 61. You're among the elite, taking the risk, taking the chance to make a difference. And most of our practice in business and my discipline is in Michigan. We do have properties throughout the United States that we manage and operate. We have 4 key divisions in our firm, just to give you a perspective. Property management of about 7.5 million square feet, office, retail, high-tech, multifamily. Brokerage services and consulting, which is the origination of the firm back in '06. Doing office, brokerage, industrial brokerage, and retail brokerage throughout the Michigan marketplace. A handful of development projects, most of which these days seem to be multifamily and mixed use, a little bit of medical, and a construction services group. But in reflection to Matt's comment about some of the things said here over the last hour, the devaluation of the commercial real estate market is significant, especially in the Michigan marketplace. We sat in a single state recession from 2001 in the downturn of the automotive sector, where most of the country saw a little hiccup, rebounded fairly well after 9/11, and didn't really come into the world that we were living here in Southeast Michigan or in the Michigan marketplace until the fall of the commercial market in October of 8. So, in the collapse of the financial markets. This market is very weathered, very battered, very bruised, has survived a long-term downward spiral in regards to loss of jobs, loss of employment, and a changing marketplace. The good news is we learned all those lessons, we got smart about it, everybody in this room and the parties outside of this room, and we navigated through those waters, and we're coming back out the other side. The tide of change of how we're being viewed in Michigan today versus what it was 2-3 years ago is remarkably different. Thanks to investors and entrepreneurs and parties who have stepped up and taken risk, like Dan Gilbert, like Steve, like our competitors in the marketplace and others, to try and change that tune and bring a new vision to what the Michigan marketplace can offer is significant. And the math surrounding it is significant. To the extent that the commercial real estate marketplace from 2000, call it late 9 to 2013, early 13, was devalued and tax revenue was cut almost in half. I think Bob Dadow and I sat in a city council meeting years ago and ran reports trying to help the city make some very difficult decisions and make some adjustments early in the marketplace. And those were the math. That was the numbers. Well, how do you operate safety, fire, community service, school systems, you name it, and provide the citizens of your communities the quality of the service that you want to provide them when your budget doesn't cover it, suffice. It's a hard job. I commend each and every one of you for your time and your energy and your services to the community. The math around Oakland County is significant. You have the strength of a AAA bonded county that is a rarity in the country. You have the big 3 that have been here for over 100 years. And rest assured, there's lots of communities throughout the country that do not have the economic drivers to jumpstart the marketplace the way this market can. And I think that's what we're seeing today in some of the headlines and the positive movement. We'll go through some analytics in a little bit about where the market is moving. But safe to say across every segment right now, it's getting better. Statistically and mathematically, it's getting better. And I'll give you one for instance. I do a lot of leasing in the commercial marketplace. CPI increase last year, Michigan market, I think trailing 12 was somewhere around 1.3% on CPI. A number to relatively justify the increased cost of services, goods, supplies, and your lifestyle. We're still able to, in the commercial marketplace, both on the tenant rep, corporate rep, and the landlord rep side of the equation, command and control 2.5% to 3.5% annual increases in most of the revenue projections. The problem is, and we're negotiating contracts with that, the problem is that those transactions used to be in the office market $22 a square foot, now they're $14. But that math translates into the valuation of the property. And that valuation translates into the justified tax revenue that property can justify and or supply back to its community. So everybody's connected across the board. The development community, though, has to understand that math and go through that math daily in regards to how they, as an entrepreneurial group, is going to take risk to try and be the foresight of what's to come, and how the financing may or may not exist, how much time and burn rate they have to underwrite and justify and carry cost, how they have to be perceived if they're buying a parcel or property, both off of a municipality or if they're a private seller. What's their perception? How's the reality going to be perceived when they have to go back to the well 3 or 4 times in the contract and negotiate extensions because they can't get to the communities to step up and assist them? These are all enormous factors that go through the developer and the investor's minds because they're trying to drive for-profit or an opportunity business as well. And the math is significant. We'll dive into the math a little bit. I'll pass this question over to Steve. And
thanks, Matt. And Matt is proving part of the point. As soon as he got into the whole profit and 22 to 14, all those things, he's proving the point. Did he mention in there at all about worried about where the sign location was? No. So it's starting to prove our point, Matt. Steve, please.
My name is Stephen Bach. I want to give you a little bit of background. The Development Company's been in business about 20 years. It is a full-service development company, but our specialty is usually a smaller development, single asset, as opposed to a strip center or shopping center or mall. And our clients, the retail clients, can be restaurants, fast feeders. We are a preferred developer for CVS in about 8 states. So we represent them pretty much exclusively. And in terms of what this particular meeting is about, I find Michigan probably on a scale of 1 to 10, although a lot of difficulties in many municipalities, probably an 8. Because the people here, for the most part, we find really do care about development. And it's not that other states don't, but perhaps they're so busy, like out east or things like that, you just never know what you're going to get. For those of you that don't know, I'm an attorney by background. I practiced law for, I don't know, close to 30 years in both litigation, banking, and commercial lending before I was talked into coming into the development business. And I happened to represent this company for about 8 years before coming on board. And I loved it because my principal would come to me, Stephen Soap, and say, I'm buying a piece of property, I'm going to develop a CVS, I want you to do the contract and do all this stuff. And they said, great, we would get it done, we would get it signed. And I wouldn't talk to him for 12 months, at least not on the project. And then one day he would come in and say, we're ready to close. Well, lo and behold, he brought me inside, and it's a whole different room. Does anybody know what created that different room? It's this room. Because it's everything from signing the contract to getting your due diligence, entitlement, permit, building the building, and delivering the keys. And therein, from a developer's perspective, we've learned time and money. Those are 2 critical issues, time and money. And if the communities themselves help on the timing side, which you spoke about briefly, it greatly enhances the opportunities for development. When Matt started showing your slides and asking you to participate in giving honest answers, didn't really realize it was just for you, and I had a clicker in my hand, and I started to click, and I said, well, wait a minute, this isn't for me. But Matt, I'm going to say to you after listening to this, Sorry I didn't know more about this ahead of time, but I would like to come out here and just sit in the meeting and learn the things that Matt was trying to teach you and share with you and let you know the different perspectives. And of course, tonight, Matt and I are here for trying to answer some questions from a developer's standpoint. I would also suggest, and I'm not afraid to say it to the community, I'm not sure that these people wouldn't like to see you conduct some kind of a seminar to invite developers. Because I would like to know more, if the people in the room are answering honestly, I would like to know more how to act, react. I mean, I've come to you on several different occasions and asked for advice and said, my hair is getting thin, but I'm pulling it out because so-and-so is being so obstinate and difficult to deal with. How do you get over these hurdles? And we've done other projects. We did one project where CVS, the entire process until we got the shovel in the ground was 5.5 months. Have any of you done a project in that shorter period of time? I see one nod. Oh, thank you. And that was because the community wanted the project. It was planned, we wanted it, the process was easy, very easily understood. We did what they asked, they didn't ask for too much. They welcomed the project and it got done. Probably the longest, and I'm using CVS because we're a preferred developer, it's just easy to talk about, but we do McDonald's, other fast feeders, things of that nature. 4 years, 3.5, battling and fighting and so forth. That example wasn't really great for the Michigan communities because that's more out east. Because you never know what you have to do. Now, so I'm going to move on to what you move on to the next
Yeah,
question.
why don't you have a seat, Steve? Keep the mic. You guys are gonna share a spotlight. This is informal. Brian, do we still have the presentation? Where'd it go? We don't have to use it, I don't think. Is it on this one?
Yeah, just.
While you're looking for that, I'm going to say one other thing.
Yeah, please.
You know, Matt's trying to present a program that helps the communities and the developers come together. We as an organization would love that. I mean, that's the first step. We do try to do pre-planning meetings, get out to the community, see what is expected. And I'd say for the most part, people are very respectful, receptive, and teach us. But I want to tell you that in a personal experience, I've seen our state move ahead in leaps and bounds because we redeveloped a number of environmentally contaminated sites. And in the last year and a half, we have done 2 TIFs and DDQ loans. And I have to tell you that through the governor's efforts, they have changed that process, at least in our experience, to make it, I don't want to use the word user-friendly, but almost user-friendly. Where we thought this process was going to take years and brain surgery, the cities, the communities, and the counties really seem to have come together for quick response time and seeming to help to get things done. And I just think it's a good example how change has occurred over the last 5-10 years in terms of that, because critical, and what didn't come out in the earlier conversation regarding this is, we know you all work hard, but how can you help better coordinate with the state? Because we can want to develop a site, we have MDOT, we have county roads, and by the time you have to go through all these approvals, and it seems like they're all segregated as opposed to moving together, I would really like to see one day somehow how that can mesh, because each step is critical. You may want the project, and you may make our life easy, but when we go into the MDOT, and we have to go somewhere else, it can become a nightmare. So anyway, that's the process.
So as a kudos to all of you, Dan and I were at a program the other day with Lieutenant Governor Colley and the new Director of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, and Doug Smith, Senior Vice President from EDC, and they were talking about some of the things that the state's done. And they've done some lean processing themselves, where they've gone through and they've taken entire departments and through sticky notes, they've defined the process of everything that they do. One of the things the Regulatory Affairs did was they found out that if you want to be a nurse in the state, you have to have a license, right? That's very reasonable. You want our nurses to be licensed, right? It was taking an average of 7 to 9 weeks to get your license. So if you got a job here in our burgeoning medical system and you're from Indiana and you're ready to move to Michigan and start working, you can move, but it was taking upwards of 9 weeks before you could actually go get on a job. It just was unreasonable, more than 2 months to get a license. They were able to get that down to 2 weeks. Seems more reasonable, doesn't it? So the idea of that really promulgated stuff. So Dan and I took the opportunity, we're in Waterford with Supervisor Wall, to explain this program. Almost immediately, the head of licensing and regulatory affairs wants to make this part of a pilot to bring the state in all the stuff that we've been talking about, so that the state has a presence in pre-app meetings, where state issues are identified. You immediately identify and say, oh, geez, this is going to have to go to DEQ, this and that. To have that liaison also not only at our level, but up at the state level. So the work that you're doing here is allowing us to further refine this, and Steve, you're talking right into it. So for the first part of the show, I kept saying, answer honestly, answer honestly. So guess what? My two good friends now need to answer honestly. Answer honestly. We've got some questions. Now, you've already heard some of the analytics. Steve's saying, geez, fix the stuff up at the state because we can't, when we get blown by time. Matt's talking about income demographics and ratios and rent ratios to expense and holding costs and all these things. We're going to ask them some questions now that deal with how they interact with you based upon all of it. At no point so far have they said anything about you being mean, which is good. But they might, you never know.
I want to tell you, I agree with everything Matt said, I just didn't want to repeat.
All right, so first question for you two. Now, the idea of this is as they're answering, you got a question, you just raise your hand or yell it out, right? So first question for me though. What are some of the key factors you look for in a community when you are making an investment decision on behalf of your client, besides location or, well, that property is available, we'll just go there. So outside of location, what are other factors that you look for in communities when you do your planning? Because I know how you work. You guys have sites and you say, this is what we're going to do this year, and you plan it. What do you look for? What are the factors you look for?
Well, as everybody already knows, we're a retail company, so we're a retailer. What our, and Matt's already mentioned, you know, we want traffic, demographics. We want other retailers generally in that location where we're going to, so that there is a draw. And that also depends, of course, on what that retailer's service business is, whether it's a fast food restaurant, pharmacy, or different kind of traffic signal. Economics. Economics are critical in terms of what is the cost of the property, because your retailers do an internal study, at least the companies we represent. We can present to them the cost of the land, the dirt, the entitlement, the due diligence, the building, soup to nuts, and we deliver the keys. But what we don't develop for the client is their internal pro forma that says, how much is this going to cost me? Are we going to be able to operate? And are we going to be able to make a profit? And that drives the approval ultimately of the deal. But of course, you're looking at access, you're looking at parking, you're looking at all the strategic factors, and then I think you had it on the board here with the entitlement process sort of like in the background, where that is a critical factor, because for us, our retailers ask us, what is the process going to be like? I'm sorry for not seeing it. Well, you can sit. They want to know what the process is going to be like. Is this going to be brain surgery? Is the community going to want you to change your building? Because everybody has an identification. They have a sign, they have a building. They want the person driving down the street to recognize what they have. So again, easiest for me to talk about is the CVS or some fast feeders, or whether it's Walgreens or whatnot. They have an identity. They have their red letters. Some community go, you can't use those CVS red letters. They're going to have to be something else. That becomes a problem. Is it that big of a problem for the community? I don't know. They want full access turns off of a major street. And when they can't get it, it becomes very painful. But we recognize traffic conditions sometimes just don't warrant it. So I'd say that, when you get done choosing the site, what you're really looking for is parking, access, demographics, unfortunately, the finance side, and things of that nature. And I like everybody else, said, well, how much money do you have to make? They don't disclose that to us, but I heard something recently, because I went to a meeting in Rhode Island, which is where their headquarters is, and I'm sure you've all heard, come October 1, they're going to quit selling cigarettes. Everybody know that?
Yeah.
They have made a decision that they're a healthcare facility, and they are not going to sell cigarettes. Does anybody know how much that's going to cost them? It's a lot. Front store sales are going to change, because if I want a pack of cigarettes, I'm going to go to the competitor, which I won't, because I have to shop cigarettes. But things like that. I mean, your front store sales change. The whole thing, it's going to cost them several $billions, but they've made a decision they're a healthcare facility. So what does that mean in terms of the development when we walk into the municipality? I honestly have a statement now that says they're really not all about the money. They provide a service. A lot of people in this room or whatnot, because I've heard it a million times, why do you want to go there? You've got a Rite Aid on that corner, and you've got a Walgreens on that corner. And what you have over there is an old dilapidated gas station in some burnt out building, but you don't want it to be a pharmacy. Well, they like the competition. They think they're better than the next guy. They want to bring the new development. They want to sell their services. They do it a little bit differently, whether it's internally in the store or whatnot. But there is competition on the corner, and they like that. So you can't be turned off when somebody comes in and says, I want to put a McDonald's here. And somebody says, well, there's a Burger King here and a Taco Bell here, and a Subway over there. If that's going to be the philosophy, the development process slows down.
So it's safe to say, one of the factors that they would look for in a community, and you can decide for this yourself. So if you're thinking, well, investors are going to come to town, they're going to do pharmacy related, I've never heard it called a healthcare facility. We'll call it a healthcare facility. Right? I'm teasing you, Steve.
No, you're not teasing me.
If there's a Walgreens on one corner, if
tease me.
there's a Walgreens on one corner, and you're trying to figure out what might go across the street, why would a community choose you? Why would an investor choose you? Oh, well, because all we got on that corner is Walgreens. Very likely they might choose our community because the competitive environment of that particular market is going to look for the other intersection corner to be a similar use. So those are some of the factors that they might look for. I didn't hear him once say that it has a cute downtown. Well, I'm sure that Matt, how about you?
I just want to say one thing, and I'll pass the baton here.
I got more questions for you,
Ease of
Steve.
process. If it's properly zoned, things like that. Are you willing to change your master plan because the times have changed? Those are those times.
Matt, just a couple things. We got some other questions.
Question one's a loaded one for me, because my perspective in real estate comes from the salesmanship of it. I got into it as the real estate brokerage side of it. So you're trained as a licensed real estate agent, and location is everything. How many licensed people do we have in the room that might carry a real estate salesman or a person's license? A couple in the room. But it's an overall training. As an abutting developer, and very much a consultant of a lot of other developers for most of my career, I would tell you our focus right now, and the things that stand out to us and why we're attracted to things, is for the future culture for the next 20 to 25 years. There's a changing dynamic, the demographic, that we have 4 generations of employees in the same work environment next time. The baby boomers are back in the workforce, the retirees are back in the workforce because the 401 became a 101 or a 201K after the crash of the market. The X and Y are still very much engaged and have tried to raise their children in a certain manner to be productive citizens in the community. The job market hasn't been that strong, so you have a millennial and an X factor that is coming out of college right now, highly educated, at 25, 26 years old with a degree, a master's degree, and fleeing the state and running to a cool town. and not thinking about a lawnmower and a 30-year mortgage, because that's not how they're wired. That's not how they live their life. They live it app to app, month to month, pay to play. If I can make enough money this month to cover the things I enjoy to do day to day, I'm going in a positive direction. It's a different mindset. So our big focus beyond location is culture. What's the communities that are going to give the life of the 360, the live, work, play, and the full perspective? And I think you're seeing that play out in a significant manner around the country, but you're especially seeing it, witnessing it. We're all watching in front of our eyes in downtown Detroit right now. And there's other communities like Rochester, like Plymouth, like Ann Arbor, like what frankly Pontiac needs to become, that have an opportunity in front of them.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
He hit it dead on the head the question I was gonna ask, and here's the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room. School systems, how important are schools to developers?
Critical. If you're in the housing side of the sector, which we do, multifamily and apartments, I'm not this, by long shot, not the strongest in the marketplace, but we have our small little mark. School systems are critical. If you look at your communities, the ones that are showing up on the front page of the paper with the highest increases in home values and the rebound of the marketplace, it's Troy, it's Birmingham, it's Bloomfield, it's Canton, it's Plymouth, it's Rochester Hills, it's Independence Township and Clarkston.
I'm going to give him the list of who's in the room soon, so he can say something.
You told me to be honest and authentic, and that's the world we watch, because those are communities where the school systems are driving the future. The future city.
All right, so stay. Next question. Remember I said honesty. Honesty is the best policy. What do communities do that kills deals? What do they do that kills the deal? What does the community do, not?
Okay, I'm going to give you two. I'll keep this short and I'll give you two. One, loose lip sink ships. To the extent you're asked and given information with the opportunity to guide and give counsel and give advice on how to get through the process, and next thing you know, it becomes a conversation at the dinner table, the next council meeting, the next this, or the next public hearing, it's a problem unless you've got granted permission to do it. Because the risk takers are the ones trying to put those deals together, and they're trying to tie that down. To the extent they have a trusted rapport with municipalities, you will see more things happen as long as there's an open and honest communication and not disclosing things too early. The second, because those are the protections of risk.
Hold on a second. I get a perspective on that. So if a developer has a particularly tight, unique, close, and trusting relationship with, say, the elected leadership of the community, does that in any way send a signal to appointed planning commissioners or to your community that, well, that guy gets the deals because he's buddies with my supervisor or my mayor? Does it create that perception?
Yes.
Honestly, it does? So, you need that relationship, because the other way prevents, starts to kill deals. You get an obstinate standoffish where you can't collaborate and get that process on the inside. So if you don't create the relationship, you become a more difficult community, which builds to the first question, what do you look for in a community? I'm hearing from Matt, you look for in a community one that we can come build a relationship with. It's a very finite line, I realize. What's your next?
Absolutely. Next one is time kills all deals. Whether it's the occupant who's looking to occupy the property, the developer who's got invested capital, either equity or borrowed dollar into that position, time kills all deals. And if you're back in front of council for multiple planning sessions, multiple permit reviews, and not getting a very clear, concise process, it can become very painful. We've been through it in a fast pace. We've been through it in a drawn-out pace. And the one thing that we do see a disconnect in a lot of communities is the overpromise, underdeliver. Or the bait switch is another way of saying it in retail, is you get the customer in the door as the sales side, the economic development component, the politicians, the board members, the council members, but then when the program hits the code enforcement side of it, all of a sudden it gets very sticky, very difficult, and it isn't quite what it originally made itself out. And the budget explodes, the budget demorphs.
Steve, what are your thoughts? What are things that communities do that will kill a deal for you?
Well, I think Matt really hit
The
on
things that you want to say as you're leaving the room. I mean,
timing is critical. Time will kill the deal. because as a developer, when we enter into that purchase agreement, we enter into it with an anticipation of time, and the seller wants to hold their feet to the fire. We try to be reasonable, we try to get as much time as we can, but it's very difficult when you're running out of time because you're running back and forth to the community with changes, and different views, and city council meetings. So I think Matt already touched, of course, on that, and that time affects finances. But, we get very involved in the site, so is the process too difficult for a variance? There's not a lot of projects that don't require some kind of variance, and how open is the community really to it? And we know that the neighbors come out. We try to have neighborhood meetings, and we try to have the municipality involved. But when we wanted to develop a site, I can't remember the community, but not far from here. And it was going to be a fast feeder, and I'll make this really quick. It was zoned properly, everything was good. We needed a couple of variances for parking, not a lot of spots, and some setback. And the neighbors came out because they didn't want this development, which the site was zoned for. And we lost, said no. So the question becomes, who's the driving force? You've got a piece of property that's properly zoned, everything is good. You need, it's gonna be developed into something. But one resident didn't want some headlights shining. We'd say we put up barriers. It really got out of hand. We had a full room of people complaining. So the question is, and I sympathize with the people in the room, how do you do your job? If you're voted in, you have a problem because you're not listening to your constituents. And otherwise, it's a tough balance. So I sympathize with you very much. So those are really only the different kind of things, difficulties.
In relation to your question, Matt, you mentioned that you got a community and developed it within 5.5 months. And you also mentioned 1 to 4.5 years. Tell me what happened that made it work and what happened that didn't make it work on 4.5?
I kind of tried to explain that 4.5 years was not pure mission. It was Maryland.
But what happened? I mean,
the hoops that you have to jump through to get any kind of permit, you have to go in front of 20 agents. And everyone thinks that they're the only one in the room, that they're the 10,000-pound gorilla somebody referred to before, and if you don't do it their way, it's the highway. And the very sad part about it is, you get your permit, you build what you're permitted for, and when the inspector comes in and says, no, I didn't really like that, and I'm not going to sign off on this unless you give me another $50,000 worth of improvement. We're not developing too much, obviously.
Well, how did you get in private half?
The community wanted it. Their process was very simple. They did things in-house. We said we wanted to do a retail. They said we love it. How long will it take? They said a couple of months for our approval. And the longest part was, took us a month to prepare the plans, took them 3 weeks to review, and then because of the retailer's process, you have to approve a budget. So there went the 5 months. I mean, it went in and went, look, some communities are busier. This community wasn't as busy as many of the communities here in Oakland County. So you can't compare, but there was the deciding factor was there was a desire, people there to help, and when you submitted it, they got it done.
But it's going to be more than just desire, I think, to get it out in 5.5 months. That had been something pretty extraordinary.
Well, so 5.5 months is doable. Less than that, I mean, that's actually a long time, yes. But I'll give you an example. So, and I apologize, Ryan, I always use the right examples from when I was there. But, so there's a new Party Store gas station on the intersection. I got this little wobbly thing. That Darrell King owned for 50 years now. I don't know how long Darrell owned it. Used to be a gas station and it wasn't. He wanted to tear down the old, build a new, put 4 gas pumps out front, and get on with life, leave it to the kids and retire. I'm hoping Darrell eventually will retire. I love that man. So he came to me, went to Trevor, like supervisor, and sat down and showed me this plan. I said, Darrell, this is beautiful. we gotta do this. And he's like silence in the booth. Pete's Coney out there on Baldwin Road. I'm like, Daryl, what's wrong? He says, I've been bringing this plan in for 15 years. They told me I'll never be able to do it. I said, well, we gotta do some things. We're changing our PUD to make it expedited. We can shrink some of our notice requirements. We did the dumb things out there where we had a planning commission hearing to set the public hearing. I mean, that might be the dumbest thing on the history of the planet to have. We're gonna put you on an agenda so we can set another date to have you come back and just dump. Because if you have that in your community, please get rid of that. So we used to have that in Oregon. We got rid of all those things. Wait, when we fixed ourselves up a little bit, Daryl came in, we went through an expedited PUD. We took about 47 days from the first meeting to the end. Well, I had to go to 2 meetings. Went to the planning commission, went to the board, it's done. So there is a way that you can do that when a community is prepared and ready. That's still a somewhat controversial project in the sense of, well, we had lots of other issues. Being to the county stalled for 4 months waiting for the septic permit. So there's other issues we'll have, but our process was done. So I'm interested to think of what you heard there. Mark, what's your thought?
I don't know. We have our planning director here, Brent Sutherland. We do preliminary site plan in 30 days. Complete application, meet all the rules.
So-
30 days before the meeting.
So picking up on what Mark is saying and what Steve is saying, I'm interested to hear what you heard, if you heard what I heard. So in the example in Maryland, wherever that was, he said, I had to go through 20 different permit agencies, and all of them felt they were more important than the rest. And it took forever. And then he said the one 5.5 months. He didn't say what the process was, but if you heard what I heard, he was saying, yeah, when I talked to them, they told me, we worked together, we figured out the process, I knew what to expect. I'm assuming they invited you into a pre-process where you talked through everything. Even though
Really a one-stop shop.
even though you say, well, they just wanted us there. Sounds to me it was more than that. Sounds to me like they welcomed them into the community to have a discussion over your project. Okay? So you can start to hear the differences of expectations in a community. Mark, you're exactly right. If you have a system set up so that you're welcoming these people in, you defray all of that. But also what I heard on the back end was, and Matt said it too, if I get through your process and your 30-day review process is hunky-dory, but I get in the back end and your building inspector won't come out and inspect my project and then maybe tags it for something just because they're having a bad day, or whatever that process may be, and you add in 60 days on the back end of the project, it's no different than you took 90 days to do the site plan.
But
It's all based on the time.
But our contractual building services has timeframes built into their contract, and they're obligated to meet those timeframes. So it's 10 days for commercial plan review.
So when we get to the session on tools, Mark's going to talk even more, because those are the types of things we're going to highlight. So one of the things that we have talked about in this process is having somebody in the community that's an ombudsman or a liaison or somebody that can actually work on your behalf a little bit. How important would that be in a community to you as a developer? So, you know what I mean, Matt? What I mean by that? That you know that you've got an ally in the pits on the other side of the county. How important is that to you?
When was the last time we turned on the 11 o'clock news at night and we heard positive things about the new company coming in and the new jobs created? There was a point in time when we saw a lot of good positive media here in the last handful of years in a rough market at 9 and 10. But more times than not, all you hear is about negativity. Who lost this, who got shot, what safety concerns, what rollover accident. Bad news spreads fast. It's human nature. Good news spreads slow. It's also human nature. In the council process or the planning process, the unfortunate thing for the process, it is what it is, but we all have a part of trying to make it better, is that you typically only hear from the naysay. The ones who are in support abstain because they're busy or they don't have a negative voice, so therefore they don't come forward. And the projects that sometimes very smart, very prudent projects don't pass because the nay voice is the only voice that's heard, and there is nobody there to champion the yay voice, the positive reinforcement. It's a human nature issue, and it's the way the process is designed, but we all have a part of making that a little bit better. And as a community liaison, to step in the middle of that and to take both sides of perspective and be able to help communicate that as healthy, as quick, especially in today's day and age, you can move information really fast, really efficiently. Be creative, get outside that box, connect with your community, and send that information out there in a fast manner, and pull the positive and the negative. Because for the developers to go in and out of council meetings or planning meetings or council meetings with what they view as a good thing, and have to spend thousands, hundreds, sometimes millions of dollars on a plan and a process to be turned down based on a naysay vote that may not see the full perspective or may not really vet out the true community desire because the vote support aren't there with voice. That's tough.
Steve, how would it affect your project scale if you knew that a community, or your choice of a community, but how would it affect your project scale if you knew that a community had a person that was specifically charged with making sure that both sides of the equation met a very timely process, meaning they had the responsibility to go chase down where the review process stood, where the permit process stood, in the same way chasing you down, saying, if you don't submit the plan by Thursday, you're going to miss the planning commission. How valuable to you and the work that you do would a position like that be in a community?
Well, I want to answer that starting from the backward side. I'd say 98% of the communities can tell us that once you submit, we expect to be in front of planning in so much time, whether it's 2 or 4 weeks, and then following with city council anywhere from another 2 to 4 weeks. I don't think I have any complaint in that arena. They do a pretty good job, although we wish sometimes the meetings were even more often, or we have emergencies so that you want a special meeting that we oftentimes are willing to pay for, but you don't really get a lot of result from that. So the community, in terms of knowing your schedule, becomes extremely important because to our clients, we literally have to break down the dates. When am I going to have my environmental done? When am I going to have this done? When's my application going in? When am I going to be in front of planning? When am I going to be in front of city council? And we try to have pre-application meetings so that we can even understand this better. Some communities do better than others, but I've never had a community say, I don't want to talk. And these become critical path lines, and you're right, I saw it on your board. We have to perform our homework and make the presentation correct because we don't want a table. I can't come back 2, 3, or 4 times to planning and then likewise have the same thing happen when I'm going to city council. But shame on us if we don't have the answers to your questions, as long as the question isn't from left field and really not material to the topic of our discussion. And you get that sometimes because there's that planner who says, just, I will never allow that. And you don't even get a chance to really address it or break it down. So hopefully I answered your question.
I'll just echo one comment on that. The earlier you hear the word no, the better from the private sector. Because if it's fictitious and it just has no merit and isn't going to be passed through the process and it's not believed it will ever be passed, and it can't be morphed into something meaningful, say no early. Because time is money and time is risk, political risk, capital risk, relationship risk, so on and so forth. We'd rather hear no quick.
So if you're going to say no, say no. Let me ask you this question. So last year, Al Kirillick was here. One of the questions came up to him was about both consistency but certainty in the process. And one of the points that he made was, one of the things that blows up certainty in the process is when our plans get reviewed, we go through the process, and there's some changes that need to be made, and we resubmit. And then the planner or the engineer writes a new letter that identifies completely new things. And then we make those changes, and it goes back, and then the planner or the engineer, they write a third letter that ultimately identifies new things. So this was Alan's version of the types of things that can cause aggravation and headache. Do those things, have you encountered those types of things, and can either of you speak to that?
I know I'm long-winded, so the answer is yes.
Okay.
I don't know what else to say. What do you do with it? Unfortunately, you have to do what you're asked to do. If we submit, when we get our comments, it goes back to our engineers and architects. Look, if there's requests or things that are demanded that we can't do, we have to have some discussion and pull, give and take. And we try to resolve it, but now we do it and we submit the plans, and when you get a whole new set of comments that you've satisfied everything else, But now these are new, I can't sum it up any better than you just put it, that, Alan said, so.
So from your side, Vic, who usually gets blamed for that? When there's multiple review letters? Who gets blamed for that? Well, the developer blames the city. Who's the city that's blamed? Developer. Well, the developer's not submitting a good plan. So, Steve, how many CVS stores has your company done in 20 years?
400 or 500.
500 stores. So that side of the equation has done this 500 times. How much does the CVS cost to bring it out of the ground?
You're gonna spend, depending upon where it is, $4 to $6 million.
All right, so
Some
500.
Some a little less.
500 times 5 million. So that side of the equation has done it 500 times at that scale of money. And yet we, because we're cool with government people, we say, yeah, the reason he had 4 reviews is because he doesn't know how to do this. Just be mindful of it. A lot of times it takes 4 reviews. Sometimes it does take 4 reviews, and sometimes it is all his fault. But be mindful of it. One of the process, when we talked the first time about having top-down mentality of the process, is if you have a section of your process in your community and everybody else is going in an efficient pattern, and they're doing all the right things. They're saying, no, I'm not going to waver the integrity of my community. I'm going to make you do blue letters instead of red letters. Or that's, as long as they have certainty. If Steve knows walking in the very first moment, you know what, there's no way you're going to get the setback on the squawk box for your pharmacy drive-through. You're going to have to use blue letters because our community loves blue. He can then go to his client and say, all right, in this community, here's the timeline, here's the requirements, what do you want to do? If you don't tell him that, and 4 meetings in and 3 review letters later, then you say, oh, by the way, you need to use blue letters on your sign. This is the type of things that we're talking about. Comment here, and then you go.
Question. Your company does also AutoZone?
We have done some, not in Michigan.
Okay, and the reason I mention it is that AutoZone, like CVS, likes competition. And the AutoZone will build next to another automotive, like Hertz or O'Reilly's.
See discounts in Bell Tire next to each other also.
So that's some place where the cities and communities need to know that your job is to build it right next to another one, whether you like it or not, because business-wise it makes sense. And a councilman like myself, who knows that it's good for the community, it might not be good for the other competition with the O'Reillys next door, but you will build it right next to O'Reilly or right across from O'Reilly for competition.
Here's the thing. As a competitor to another pharmacy, we like to go across the street from another pharmacy. Why? Who can answer that question for us? Anybody? It's not just the traffic, it's a built-in business. People go to that drugstore. I would like some of his business and your business. The drugstore that's there, they complain because I'm taking some of their business. Well, where do they go next week? Across the street from wherever the heck I built. And if anybody drives by 13 in Woodward, Walgreens built a huge store there. We built a huge store there. They're both doing business. I don't see anybody closed. I don't see anybody out of competition.
Don, your thoughts? I'm cutting you off because I want to be mindful.
I'm moving backwards.
Yeah, please. Please.
When we do a plan review, and we send it out, you get your response back. What they're reviewing now is your response. And if your response doesn't meet code, yeah, there's going to be more. But also with plans in the first place. We get plans that come in our convention. We get plans that come in where page 2 doesn't match up with page 1, and page 3 is something else altogether. Now, a lot of the trouble with plan review is incompetent architects.
Let me just say that I agree with you. Our engineer makes mistakes. Our architect makes mistakes. Some of those mistakes we don't discover until we're 3/4 through construction, and we're supposed to have, there's something missing. There's something missing on the plans. People make mistakes. But your example is a little bit different than when Matt said. If you told me what to do and I didn't do it, shame on me. If you told me what to do and I did it, and Matt's question was, but if you come back, you as the city, come back with 5 new comments, how does that affect our development? And the continual additional new comments, instead of having a single cohesive review, is a major difference. To your point, yes, if we didn't do it right, our fault, and I would stand up and tell you that.
from the marketplace, how many people like the Pure Machine campaign? Love it, right? It's a fantastic campaign, one of the best in the country, hands down. We get magazines all the time, probably the most notable is Tennessee. They're flocking the brokerage companies, the consulting companies, the development companies. They're a state that wants to compete with everybody, and they're gonna make it easy. The process in Tennessee is a rubber stamp process. If an architect signs a plan and puts their seal on it and ensures their seal, it's a review period in different municipalities, as short as 7 days, as long as 30 days, where if they don't come back with response, it's approved. And then it's the builder's insurance if they fail to perform to that plan. And then so on and so forth. So the risk is shared amongst the entire professional acumen, not just at the developer who's hiring good people to try and be confident in doing it, and they move fast. These are the reasons why big box users are looking at multiple markets. Verizon pulled out of Southfield last year, shut down the mall center, they're vacating 140,000 square feet, they laid off 350 jobs overnight, and there's another 700 forthcoming. That's a process. Where'd they go? Not to Michigan. They made that decision 2 years ago. It might be different today, because the market's turned better, but they went to another more favorable community where they had better pricing, better rates, more favorable aspect, and a rebounding community from a value standpoint at that point in time.
I want to go back 10 seconds, and I promise 10 seconds.
No, that's okay.
You asked the question about the ombudsman.
They're so excited that they get to share their.
Anybody wants to leave? But the question was asked about the ombudsman, and I took that two ways. The ombudsman at the community level, somebody there that's helped and coordinate and knows what they're doing, because we have troubles with the utility company, we have trouble with the state, whether it's roads or access. And I'm not saying the state is trouble, it's just getting all this coordinated so the project can move forward in a fair fashion. So you have the ombudsman on your side, which I think is unnecessary. But we also sometimes engage that ombudsman from our side. I want to know who goes well in the community, who knows what they're doing in the community, and how can we use that local talent to help us get through your process. So I really think when you talk about the term ombudsman, from a developer standpoint, we try to look at both sides. It's not just one-sided. Who's local that can help us with
All right, so let me give you, we're starting to get towards wrap-up time. We want to have some time for questions too. So I'll give you one final scenario that I want you to answer honestly, because it will be instructive, I think. So, if you go into a community and you use our question, which I hope all of you start asking of new investment. You want to build a garage, when do you need to park your car inside your garage? Finding out that date of anticipated occupancy and use. The reason it's important for that date is because, as they've indicated, there's carrying cost. If you delay a project for 3 months, who pays the 3 months to be on the property, to pay the utilities, the carrying costs of your options, all of that? There's huge dollars at play in those aspects. So when you ask, Steve, or you go into a community and you say, all right, listen, it's the end of July, we need to have this store open by October 1st, pretend, okay? I need to be in there, I need to have this use up and running by October 1st. And the community sits down and says, all right, they pull out their charts and their schedules and they say, all right, here's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to go through an initial planning commission, and then we're going to have to schedule a special meeting to hold a special use hearing. And then you're going to have to go from there to the township board, and we want to allow for 2 hearings at that point, just on a just-in-case period. One of them is going to be a special hearing. Now, the 2 special hearings you're going to have to pay for, both of those special hearings. So we'll get you through the planning commission, the normal process. We'll go special hearing. We're going to build a little time in case we have to review the plan. We're going to go board special hearing possibility at that point. We're looking at your plan. We know you're going to need to get a variance. So when do you want to go to the ZBA? You say, we'll go before we go to the board. All right, we're going to extend that out a little bit, and we can do that, but now you're going to have to pay a fee for a special meeting in front of the ZBA. So now you're up to 3 special meetings. All have fees associated with them. And so that, if we can get you through that second township board meeting, it'll give you about 4 weeks to get through the permit process. And we think we can deliver on that schedule. But if you screw up, then we can't deliver on the date. You'll pay for all 3 meetings? You pay for
99% of the time,
99%.
yes. but you use things like financing and costs and stuff. Anybody in here refer to sales days? The retailer says, you promised me this store on October 1. It's now December, we won't open the store between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so we're gonna open in January, and by the way, you got a black eye because you cost us 90 sales days. We're lost. We lost, we can't recover.
Every day they're not open. They're
Every
losing
day
money
they're
because
not
there's no
open,
customers in
and
the
it
building.
affects the internal operational pro forma, and I don't care what retailer you're talking about.
So the alternate.
And it goes back to your ability
Target
to
to
take
Dairy
on,
Queen.
and it takes on his ability to then perform on the next project, because there's many other people and developers sitting behind him wanting to bite at that apple.
So the alternate. Remember we talked about, this is about self-evaluation, perception, how you're perceived. Why are they choosing you to come invest in your community, like it or not? Perceptions, alternate scenarios. You know, this community, even though they'll sit down with you up front, they never really go through the extent of trying to figure out a schedule for you. They just say, you know what, we really want to work with you. But you know deep down that they're one of those communities that they take a couple, 3 shots at the plan review, and you know, the permit process is good, but you know, we know their inspectors aren't all that on the same page as everybody else. Does that change your decision to tell the client you can get in by October 1st? Because you know the community they're trying to go to has that kind of wishy-washiness. They're good people, they go through the process, but you just know, you know what, I don't know what to expect there. Does it change your decision process?
The community's our partner, and yes, we know ahead of time. If Matt and I sat in a corner and had a conversation, we could probably talk about the same communities that we know are, I don't want to say aren't honest or have all the core values, but you just, if they tell me 9 months, I'm going to make it 15. There's repetition. Okay. Repetition.
So does that same analysis, what he just said about all of you, apply to him? That you often think the same thing sometimes, that, well, can I really trust this guy? I know I've thought that on all sides of the scale. So the lesson there that I'm going to let these two give some final remarks about the topic and take any more questions that you have, and then we're going to wrap up. The lesson here is this. If you had more communication from developers like this, would it help you in understanding your process and how to do this work? Would it help if you had more stuff like this? All right. Would it help you if you had more communication with these folks on this type of stuff and on what you're doing in the process? It would help you as well.
I told you
So,
from the beginning, I wish.
so what's the key to the whole thing? Communication. What's the most important part of being one-stop ready? Pre-application process where you can do what? You can communicate. Does it help if everybody's there? Does it help if you pull in the planner, if the planner's going to review, or you pull in the whomever? Does it help? Yes. Would it be worthwhile to try to get to everybody at the table so you could communicate? Troy, that's what you do, don't you? Sure as heck no, that's what Auburn Hills does. All right, so communication. So these are all really good topics. So we usually try to get everybody out at 8:30. It's 8:28. They haven't yelled and screamed at us yet. But if you have some brief closing, I know, Matt, you want to share the analytics stuff?
Just so anybody knows, I'm happy to stand around after. I don't know how polite was.
Good. So Matt, why don't you give some remarks?
Well, I'll end these comments with a positive, and that is, we're in a marketplace right now that is in substantial recovery mode and has been for the last couple of years. So why was the multifamily market hot from the crashing market in 10 or 8 to now? Because financing was available, because the general consumer couldn't get a general mortgage, and they were looking for shelter. And the apartment market took off, and now what's happened? You can't find apartments to acquire for decent numbers, the returns are very light. And I want to point this out. There was a comment earlier about the big bad developer making too much money, and picture on the screen. Totally understand the perception. The reality is there's a cycle of that cash. The cash that they typically borrow, 60 to 80% of that in the marketplace is public money that is going out to protect retirement plans and pension plans and other things that keep unions and keep working and skilled labor back in force for those benefits of retirement plans. It's a huge, huge chunk of the working capital that goes back in to financing that process. So there is a cycle of that cash, and we are all, everybody in the room is connected in that process in some way, shape, or form. The analytics in Southeast Michigan, especially in Oakland County, are very, very strong. So I'm going to point your attention to the screen for 1 second. This is the entire marketplace as a whole. You've got 458 million square feet of commercial property. I'm going to dissect this number in a couple of manners. And one, the office component in Oakland County is 90 million feet, represents 19.6% of the market. Office is having some challenges right now. It's the lagging factor. Office took a bloodbath. Why? Because we're in a paperless society. We're doing more with less. We don't need the desk space. The architect's doing everything on computer instead of rolling out plans. All the different hypotheticals. The CPAs are doing it automated instead of paper stacks. The average seated working office user is in less space today than ever had. And technology is putting 2 or 3 people out of work because one person can do the work more efficiently with automation. So those are key factors. Will it recover? Yes. Is it lagging right now in this marketplace? Absolutely. Certain markets are better than others. The industrial market's 122 million square feet in Oakland County. And I look at industrial and flex, which is another 21. Those in the market know what flex space is. R&D, it's the tweener between office and industrial. R&D, research, lab, typically single story, heavily parking ratio, so on and so forth. There's a separate category for that. But when you combine those 2 categories in Oakland County, it's 31% of the market. The retail market, where Steve spends most of his time, where I don't, is about 81 million square feet in Oakland County, represents 17.6%. You add those 4 categories up, it's a total of 68%. So the next question is, where's the balance 31? It's specialty, it's hospital, it's unique uses, it's schools, it's government. It's all the specialty categories that aren't your run-of-the-mill common sense type uses. So I guess I implore, get creative, get outside the box, realize that it doesn't all have to fit in a perfect package. And the marketplace and the consumers in the marketplace are going to help drive projects that have destinational draw and destinational intent. There's nothing better in retail, there's nothing better in real estate than having something that's going to draw traffic and draw activity and draw culture. And that's one thing that is definitely a buzz in downtown Detroit right now, which all of us in this room, as Oakland County employees, administration, residents, we're challenged because we have a competition that for the last 40 years we didn't have. That's a fact. And there's a buzz. We got to compete against that buzz in some manner. On the analytics, we're happy to go through this. I know we're short on time. Anytime you want in certain communities and seeing the changes in the trends. But if you look at the vacancy factor, the vacancy factor has plummeted fairly high across the entire commercial marketplace. It's the first graph from 2011 to current. It's fallen quite a bit. Overall vacancy 13.1, down from the 5-year average of 18.6. The asking rents per square foot starting to turn. Now this is a blend of all commercial. I'll play with one thing, only because it's probably the biggest driver today. The industrial market's gotten extremely tight. Developers are now out speccing buildings and doing build-to-suits, putting new product on the market. It's good and bad, because there's a lot of functionally obsolete industrial product that probably needs to be readapted and reused before we do that. But it's what the consumer is looking for. Higher ceilings, more power, better access, so on and so forth. So let me filter this 1 second. Let's just look real quick at the industrial market in Oakland County. Industrial market in Oakland County 5 years ago represented 128 million square feet. It's now 122. Why did it shrink? Ford Wixom, right? GM Truck and Bus, Centerpoint. Big box square footage came off the roster because the big stakeholders on the automotive recognized that they had remediation requirements and they had to do that for good community and good citizenship. And they spent the money and or the private market stepped in and did it. The vacancy factor in the industrial market went from 12.1 to 5.3 in all of Oakland County. Developers are lining up, ready to do deals. Almost every developer I know in the marketplace is out there trying to find and secure dirt at reasonable price points that they can be holding on to for the if come of a user who landed their lap to go to a build suit. Because that's a leading edge. Asking rents have increased from 4.72 to 5.26. 20% increase. It's significant in the math. So just keep these things in mind. We've troughed. 2 years ago, it was very, very difficult to get anything done in any of the sectors, because if a decision was delayed, the deal the next day got better, because there wasn't people lining up behind it to take it away. As the market has troughed, as vacancies are are tapering, as asking rents and closings are tapering up and troughing up, that delayed decision is now happening because people are forced to make the decision because the next day the deal's worse. It's more expensive, it's more costly, it's not the best time to do it. And that's a good thing. It's why it ramps up fairly fast with the support of the big three and some of the other things in the market. The last comment I'll make is in the office sector, we've had a very unique twist in the market for the last year. And this is a 100% assumption, it's only a belief. I have no mathematic backing to this other than my perceptions and our barometer. But we see the traffic on a lot of buildings. Who's calling, who's asking how big they are, how small they are they creditworthy, are they asking for 5-year leases or 1-year leases? And we analyze that, we watch it, and we get a pulse on it. The bread and butter activity in the Oakland County marketplace, the average office user is about 3,000 square feet, 3 to 3,200 square feet in total. That's a lot of small businesses. There's some big users out there too that have hundreds of thousands of square feet in the marketplace, even millions of square feet in Oakland County. The bread and butter activity, representing mostly small business, has slowed down considerably from third quarter last year through first quarter, even into the second quarter of this year. I don't have a reason for it. What I will say is, big box users, we've seen more big box users hit the marketplace in the last 9 months than I've seen in 15 years. Taking big space and looking at big acquisitions and big takedowns. My theory behind it, and it's not science, it's just belief, is that these small operators in that bread and butter, the 2,000 to 15,000 square foot type operators, are running organizations that are 10 to 100 employees. And everybody in that sector, whether you're a law firm, whether you're a professional service, whether you're manufacturing something, whether you're an insurance company, you're looking at your cost of operations trying to understand, are you surviving for the next year or surviving for the next 15 years? And an overwhelming thing that affects everybody out there is healthcare. Obamacare went in place in January. Last year, nobody really knew what that meant. It was a 1,700-page document that nobody knew how to read. And everyone in this room hoped that it wasn't going to go negative, hoped it was going to be better, hoped it was going to be more cost-effective, but nobody really knew. The big medical groups in the market, who are the insurance companies, that were all looking at projects last year, third and fourth quarter, wouldn't make decisions because they had no idea where the revenue was going to be. What happened first quarter? Meridian announces a new build-to-suit downtown Detroit in Campus Nexus, which shows that. Molina acquires a building in Troy for a steel and relocates their headquarters out Big Beaver up to North Troy. Blue Cross Blue Shield's in the middle of a big decision right now on whether or not they're going to sign the incumbent in 2 locations or if they're going to relocate to a more effective space and take down more. United Health Group doubled their space. They're making money. We're starting to finally see confidence come back in the new plan. It's not good, it's not bad, it's uncertainty. And uncertainty forces people to sit on their hands and not make decisions. So the good news is the trends are going positive, the activity is going positive. First recovery was already multifamily. Second recovery was the industrial market. Third recovery is the office market. On the retail sector, I look at it a little bit differently. This is my perception, but I'll go for validation with Stephen. Retail sector, if it's good location, good product, with good co-tenancy, it still survives from a vacancy standpoint in most cases. Where it gets hit is on the revenue side because the $20 rent tenant pulls out and the Dollar General comes back in at a fraction of the value. Because if it's driving the demographic and the foot traffic in the door, there's usually a tenant out there willing to take advantage of that customer base coming into it. But the economics fall. So vacancies didn't peak that high in the retail, but the valuation of the real estate, which affects tax revenue and so on and so forth, did. Took it. General assumption. Thank you very much for everybody for allowing us to do this.
In a closing comment, I wrote myself 2 little notes, but backing up what Matt said last set on the retail side. Where the retail really got hit was in their financing. It was in the heyday, they had the good tenants, the good mortgage and everything else, and those mortgages came due. And the shopping center owners had to refinance, and they had no value. But we're finding the retail market to be coming back. Like I said, our expertise is in a single asset user as opposed to the shopping center, although we're expanding. We're doing a very large project right now in Seattle that'll be retail and residential. And it's coming back in Oakland County. But we're also expanding. We're doing stores up north now. We're doing things in Midland, Bay City, Grand Rapids. Things are starting to expand out as well. But the two notes I made, for me to wrap up, was everybody, including us, have core values. And one of the major things is the trustworthiness, that partnership I mentioned before, we're trying to bring forward and develop it. And Matt touched on it, he said confidentiality. That has wrecked deals for us probably at least a dozen times. And what happens is we want to redevelop, but we're going to buy out a business and do certain things. And way too soon, the guy's operation has to close because his employees left, the rumors are out, his business dropped, and his store closed 6 months or 8 months before our closing. And that's assuming that all things work well and things begin. So when we come to the municipality and say, this needs to be kept quiet, when we're having those preliminary discussions, I understand once we file our application, everything is public, it's in the public domain, there's nothing we can do about that. But confidentiality is of great importance. And then the last thing was consistency. Remain consistent. If your process happens to take a little longer, or it takes 12 or 14 months, that's not the worst thing in the world for me, because I tell the retailer, everybody's on the same page, and if we get it done quicker, I'm a hero, you are a great city. Where the consistency can't go is, you tell me it's 6 months, and it takes 14. If you're consistent, I can be consistent, we're on the same page. And that comes generally with just having core values, which is honesty, integrity, and give me the best you have. And we all understand things happen. Sometimes they're not in my control, sometimes they're not in yours. And for that, if we're getting along, then that's my explanation. We got blindsided. I don't ever want to say it was the municipality's fault. I don't like saying it's my fault, but I have to admit it when it is. But if we get blindsided, then we're all there swimming in the same pool. And I want to thank everybody for having me here. And Matt, I can get a little long-winded. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to stand around and talk to you. And Matt seems to know a lot of people.
All right, so 2 more academy sessions. The next one is implementation of best practices, where we do even more dialogue amongst each other. How do you make some of this stuff work? What are some of the things other communities are doing that make them really happy? So how you implement that. The last one is management structure, where we talk about examples of how you get that top-to-bottom mentality going. All right, and then we send you off your way after that session, then we come working with you individually. So 2 more sessions. We want you to attend all of them. The next 2 are really good. We give community examples, meaning your peers now are going to say, hey, you want to be cool and win awards amongst your constituents? This is what you do. So it's cool. I want to thank the developers for coming in. I think we shocked them by allowing them to speak heartily, and I hope you took it to heart. And get out there, be safe. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.